All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you are new. Thank you for taking time out of your day to check the video out. We are going to discuss what I believe Sony needs to do as soon as possible. I believe it is absolutely necessary at this point in time, and that is to simply reveal new games, host some type of show, whether it be an actual showcase or a state of play, focused on revealing new games. And I want to specifically emphasize the word new. The reason why I want to emphasize this word in particular is because we are just coming off of the PlayStation 5 Pro technical presentation, and obviously the elephant in the room is the price point, which we've talked about at length. But there's another, in my opinion, problem with the way Sony went about showing off this console. It is new hardware, and I think a base expectation that people have when new hardware is being shown is new games alongside it. Now, that's what made the situation, I think, even more awkward with the reveal of the PS5 Pro, is that the very first game Sony decided to show running on the Pro wasn't even a PlayStation 5 developed game. It was a PlayStation 4 developed game, that being The Last of Us Part 2. Now, don't get me wrong, The Last of Us Part 2 is a very impressive looking game, one of the most impressive looking games, but there's no getting around the fact that this game was developed from the ground up natively for the PlayStation 4, the last generation machine, not the PlayStation 5. We have yet to actually see a from the ground up developed PlayStation 5 title from Naughty Dog. So I think Sony choosing to make that the first game to highlight is a bit of a mistake and just creates an even more awkward situation aside from the pricing of the Pro console. But then when you look at the other games that they decided to show, they are certainly all impressive games. Games like Demon's Souls, games like Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Spider-Man 2. But again, these are all games that people have likely played already. I mean, we could look at something like Spider-Man 2 and say, well, hey, that's a from the ground up PS5 game. And while that may be true, even what they decided to show was so minimal and so brief, it really couldn't get anybody that excited, because it's just, again, it's just like a 10-second, like, here's a comparison, somewhat zoomed in, and now we're going to move on to another game that you probably have already played. Right? And I emphasize probably have already played because the reality is most people tuning into this presentation and tuning in to hear about this new hardware likely are already PS5 owners and have, played most of these titles. So this is why I think right now Sony needs to show some new games. I think that it's obvious there's a massive amount of backlash that Sony is experiencing right now. And that's understandable, and that's even to be expected with a console being priced at this point with, not including the stand and all that stuff. Of course, there's going to be backlash, but I really do think and believe that most people, if not all people, who currently play on PlayStation, no matter how mad they are at the Pro, the reason you play on PlayStation is for the games, right? Something that Sony offered at some point in time, whether it be a first-party exclusive, a second-party exclusive, a third-party exclusive, or just a third-party multi-plat title, something in that category brought you over to PlayStation for one reason or another. And that's why I think it's just so awkward to see how this is playing out, because what we are basically witnessing is Sony saying, here's new hardware, the most advanced console ever made, the most powerful console ever made, also by far one of the most expensive, but we're not going to show you new games. And so it just really adds salt to the wound, I think. And the good news is that apparently next week, if rumors are to be believed, Sony is planning on doing just this. They are planning on hosting a relatively large state of play where the focus is going to be on showing PS5 Pro enhanced games. And one rumor in particular that seems to be coming from a pretty credible source claims that this state of play will be big, as I said, but it will also have some first-party reveals and maybe even one big world premiere, which is, again, they were saying maybe that'll show up here, maybe not, but just putting emphasis on this is what Sony is going to do. And I really hope it's true, right? It makes sense. I know that no matter what Sony decides to show game-wise, it's not going to win people over. It's not going to win most people over and suddenly saying, you know what, actually, I am okay paying $700 for a Pro. But that's not the point. The point remains, we need to see the games. The games are what bring people to PlayStation to begin with. The games are why people have PS5s to begin with. And so regardless of our feelings on the Pro or even these games being PS5 Pro enhanced, we've reached that point where it's like, Sony, now more than ever, you gotta show some kind of roadmap. You gotta have some new game announcements to rejuvenate the fan base and get, most importantly, get people back to talking about what matters the most. The games. I feel like we had a couple of days there where the focus was on just that. It was on the game. It was on Astrobot. But just like that, the rug was pulled out of from underneath Astrobot, and suddenly it's like, oh no, the PS5 Pro and the insane price point is now the focal point. And I just feel like this is something that can easily be kind of overcome, like I said, if Sony just gives people what it is that they want, what they've been waiting for. Not to make it sound like Sony hasn't been delivering games, or that, you know, there hasn't been a myriad of games to play on the PlayStation 5. That would be very disingenuous to claim. But we kind of have reached that endpoint where the only games that are left to release are Until Dawn Remake, which, you know, I'm going to be honest, there's not a whole lot of hype around that, and also Lego Horizon, which I don't know how much excitement there is around that. Doesn't seem like there's that much. You know, some people are interested in it for sure, but it's not really saying much. We know about games like Death Stranding 2 and Wolverine, but beyond that, we don't really know much else. And even with those two games I just listed, we have yet to see anything from Wolverine that wasn't leaked. We have yet to see anything in some kind of official capacity. And when it comes to Death Stranding 2, you know, the reality is, and I say this as somebody who's extremely excited for it, it's not going to be a game for everybody. I think that's fairly obvious. Doesn't make me any less excited to see it, but I just think that Sony needs to do a little bit more now, especially after, you know, seeing what happened with Concord. We had that brief moment in the sun with Astrobot, but now, you know, the backlash is here again with the PS5 Pro. I just think, Sony, the time has come. You know, your 30th anniversary is coming up in early December. It just feels like now is the time to look. If you're not going to put on a big showcase and show like 4 or 5 first-party reveals, at least have a big state of play where there is some type of first-party presence. And I want to emphasize that first-party presence should not be, hey, here's another trailer for The Last of Us Part 2 PS5 Pro Enhanced or Spider-Man 2 PS5 Pro Enhanced. We should see new games, right? Like, that's really, I think, what we need to see. But I'm going to temper my expectations, and I recommend you do the same. I felt like it was important to have this discussion because it is unfortunate that as we are seeing this new hardware revealed, the conversation seems to be focused on everything but the games, and that is understandable. Again, that I think is Sony's fault in the way that they chose to go about doing this, but it would be great if by the end of next week, Sony were to put on some type of pretty big state of play, have some new game reveals. Of course, they're going to show some older games, you know, they're going to show games that have already come out that are enhanced. I think we all expect that, but it can't be the only thing they show. They got to bring the goods, right? They got to deliver what people have been asking them to deliver for what feels like a while now. Because sure, it's great that we've gotten games like Returnal and Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart and God of War Ragnarok and Horizon and GT7 and all that. It's great. We've had so many games, but we officially have reached that point where it's like, you know, what lies ahead? If you want people to go out there and be excited to buy a Pro, even for that price point, what lies ahead, right? We've reached that point. It has to happen. So Sony, I feel like you got to get on this ASAP. I think it can really only benefit you at this point, and I think it would go a long way in kind of calming people down and, you know, maybe reminding people that, listen, if you do just buy the base PS5 or you're already playing on the base PS5, these games are also coming to that, and they're going to look and run great, and you can still be just as excited for them, right? I think that it would go a very long way, but I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and have this discussion with you guys. And so let me know down in the comments below if you agree with me. Do you think Sony needs to come out as soon as possible and start revealing new games and getting people excited once again about the games and putting the focus on the games again. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Leave the video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share the video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.